it's rather serendipitous. Sometimes we find ourselves in appropriate recording situations. We're going to be talking about an aquatic themed show right before our neck of the woods is potentially going to be hit with some heavy rain and wind, much like a hurricane.
Yeah, I think that the IRL Theodore the Tugboat is going to have his own episode tomorrow, given that a hurricane's about to hit the harbor, and that's where Theodore lives. So we'll see what happens with the adventure of Theodore and Hurricane Teddy tomorrow.
I would actually really like to know what you have to do. I mean, I imagine it's probably no different than any other boat, but what has to be done to make sure that Theodore, the real Theodore, doesn't incur any damage during events like this? I imagine they probably just tie him down, maybe put a tarp over him, and I wonder if there's any more to it than that.
Yeah, I really don't know much about the upkeep of real Theodore, if he's got a little house that they put him in or what have you. But I guess, well, we're going to find out.
That's right. Welcome, everybody. This is For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast where we are looking at other PBS Kids shows that aren't Arthur. Welcome to our newer patrons who may be listening to this for the first time. And today we are going to be discussing something that was definitely a part of both of our childhoods, maybe a part of yours, but did technically air on PBS Kids. And I've been looking forward to talking about it. We're talking about, as we mentioned, Theodore Tugboat, which is kind of, if you break it down, it's kind of the boat equivalent to Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah, and it's funny, Will, in rewatching these episodes, we are uniquely qualified to talk about Theodore the Tugboat. I remember how we felt when we were talking about Sagwa, and we both felt kind of hamstrung by the fact that neither of us know a lot about feudal China. And this is almost the inverse in that you're looking at two people, or you're listening to two people who can say a thing or two about Theodore the Tugboat.
Oh, you better believe it. Yeah, this is exciting for us to get to because, as we will talk about, Theodore was made and developed and even pretty much takes place in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where I, Will Young, and my co-host, Lucas Mancini, are both from. Well, Lucas, you're from the other side of the harbor, from Dartmouth, so we're covering both sides of the equation here.
That's right. We have the harbor completely covered, and so we could both, growing up, we both had views of the IRL Theodore zipping around the harbor, so we're both uniquely qualified to talk about this.
One quick thing that's actually not podcast related, just before we get started here. If you're a patron listening to this and you haven't responded to a private message on Patreon that I sent all of the patrons, please answer it at ASAP. I just need to get everybody's response on that one way or the other. And you can also check the Discord messages as well. So, check your messages on Patreon if you haven't yet. Just wanted to get that out there. Please and thank you. Yeah, so Theodore Tugboat. This is one that was a huge part. I was a huge fan of. I remember having a lot of the merchandise. I remember, it being appointment television in my place. So I was excited to research a bit more about what went into it. And I have to say, there will be we'll try and make this as accessible to everyone as possible. One thing I've learned recently is we have a lot of patrons who are from the USA or other parts of Canada, or in one case, even Australia. So we will try and make this as accessible as possible, but there will be a lot of references to like Halifax-specific stuff. So hopefully we don't get lost in the weeds on that. Again, this rarely comes up where we have an opportunity, a platform to talk about something that is Halifax through and through. In fact, Lucas, I have, when we get started, let's get started here with my notes. This is something that I wonder if you've ever encountered. So the creator of Theodore Tugboat, the creation is credited to one of the producers, Andrew Cochran, and he got the idea from the stories he would tell his kids about a tugboat named Theodore, and his friends. Now, like many of the cast and crew on Theodore Tugboat, he's a native Haligonian. He actually teaches at the Faculty of Computer Sciences at Dalhousie.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to ask my roommate. I wish I had known that earlier. I'd ask my roommate if he knows him, because he took computer science at Dal.
Who knows? We might be able to get like an exclusive interview or something.
So, get this. I don't know Andrew Cochran. But if you, I did a little bit of research myself, and the executive story editor and principal writer of the series was a guy named Jeff Rosen.
Yes.
And I went to junior high with his daughter.
No. No way.
I have met Jeff Rosen.
Oh, talk about exclusive. There you go. I mean, unfortunately, I don't have the same ties with any of the cast, any of the crew we'll be talking about, but I didn't consider the fact that we have double the spread now. So
yes,
that's interesting.
So Jeff Rosen, he I think he went on to work on such shows as, oh geez, what was that show?
I do have a couple of them, if in case you. But what were you thinking of?
The Spaceman one that was also on CBC.
Space Ranger Roger?
Let's see. Space Ranger Roger? Perhaps. Space Ranger Roger. Anyway, his fun fact about him, no, not Space Ranger Roger. It was like stop motion, like Spaceman Jim, I want to say. Like, let's see. But Jeff Rosen's daughter went on to become a Lunar Jim. Excuse me. Lunar Jim was another show that he worked on that was on CBC. But yes, he kind of, his big claim to fame was being the executive story editor and principal writer of Theodore the Tugboat. And his daughter went on to become a pop star in Germany as the artist called Waves with two V's. Not the punk band Waves with two V's, but another artist with Waves with two V's, and she has a song with Iggy Azalea. So this is that's the most kind of behind the scenes info I can give about Jeff Rosen. Not much to do with Theodore the Tugboat, but it truly is a small world, Will.
Yeah, my goodness, that's really interesting. I would have had no idea. Yeah, just a quick. We will get into Jeff Rosen in just a moment. Just wanted to wrap up about Andrew Cochran, the creator of the show. He's head of the company Cochran 360. He also produced the TV movie and series Pit Pony, which I think we might have referenced before.
That's right. That is another legendary East Coast program. Everybody around here knows about Pit Pony.
So Cochran Entertainment, which was his production company at the time, worked with CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which actually came up in our Mr. Rogers episode, if you haven't listened to that yet. So they worked with each other to develop the show in 1989. So production started in 1992, and the first show was first broadcast in 1993, with notable crew including the aforementioned Jeff Rosen, who is the executive story editor and principal writer on the show. Lunar Jim, Space Ranger Roger were some of his credits. Poco was another one.
All right, Poco!
And Bo on the Go, which were all kind of CBC kids shows. Some other crew include Fred Allen, who is the art director and master model maker. So he created all of the boats and the sets, or at least was kind of in charge of creating all the boats and the sets. He actually worked for Neptune Theater as a set builder for a time, and he's credited with working on Theodore 2, who we will talk about in a little bit, the giant life-sized replica of Theodore Tugboat.
Yes, which we referred to earlier as Theodore IRL. Some background for some of our listeners who aren't from Halifax. I'll try and contextualize this stuff as much as we can. Neptune Theater is the local theater here. So if you want to go see a play and have it not be kind of a smaller independent there, that would be at the Bus Stop Theater where you could see independent plays. But if you want to see kind of a larger production, all the bigger plays come to the Neptune Theater. So recently, of course, this is pre-COVID, they had like the Shrek musical. I'm trying to think of other recent. They do the Christmas Carol every year, but that's an old standby in the Halifax downtown.
I actually, the last time I went was for my mother's birthday. We saw The Color Purple, and it was fantastic. But yes, they get all of the plays and the musicals that you would have heard of. That's kind of our main, Halifax's main theater. So we also have on the crew Tom Anthes, apologies on the pronunciation, who was a art director and set designer at CBC, also known for his work on This Hour Has 22 Minutes, which is a CBC Canadian kind of sort of like a daily show, a parody satirical news show. That is it still going, or did they cancel that?
No, 22 Minutes is, I think, still going.
Okay.
But yeah, it kind of lampoons Canadian politics specifically.
And one of the directors on the show who directed a lot of the episodes is named Robert Cardona, who was a producer of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, and also created the Thomas adjacent show called Tugs, which was kind of the same thing as Theodore Tugboat. It's just Thomas the Tank Engine, except it's boats, and that was attached to the show Salty's Lighthouse.
Whoa,
if you ever watched that.
I'm looking at the Tugs right now. I never heard of Tugs, and this is like some bizarro world Theodore. This is kind of unsettling. I don't know how I feel about this. I don't like this.
The designs are different from Theodore. They're much more look like the Thomas trains.
They have more like chins and cheeks. They're like the Chad version. Theodore. I do not like these guys. I'm Team Theodore on this one.
So the funny thing is that I watched Salty's Lighthouse like almost by accident here and there, and then they would get to the parts where they would play the parts from Tugs, and I'd be like, wow, this is awesome. It's like Thomas on the sea, but then that would not be the whole show, and I'd lose interest. So yeah, a couple of, and I should mention all of these crew members are either Haligonians or they are Nova Scotia natives. So everything very much in-house. Speaking of in-house, Theodore itself, the show, was filmed in the Alexander McKay School, which I did have to do a little bit of asking around. There is an elementary school in the north end of Halifax named St. Joseph A. McKay, which was founded from St. Joseph's Elementary and Alexander McKay, which is where Theodore was filmed. So the Alexander McKay School doesn't exist anymore except in name. So they would fill up the gymnasium with water, and that would be the set of Theodore Tugboat.
Whoa, I was going to ask, how they fill it in the school, because that's one of the impressive things about Theodore the Tugboat as opposed to something like Thomas the Tank Engine, is that the effect of real water. The models are actually floating on real water, which is a really unique look because you don't really see that in almost any other kind of show using miniatures. And I was wondering, where did they get this space to put all this water? I had no idea it was a school gym.
Definitely. So they would kind of wash it out, and they would dye the water so that it looked a little bit more presentable. It wasn't just water from the hose or something. And speaking of the way that it's unique from something like Thomas. So the boats were radio controlled, and they had these little underwater wheels that would kind of guide them wherever they need to their marks, essentially, which I think is a bit different. I've always wanted to look into how Thomas the Tank Engine was filmed, and I don't know if that's similar or different, but that's how they did it there. And as Lucas and I well know, the sets of Theodore Tugboat are designed to look like Halifax Harbor, and I think we can confirm, although this was kind of produced in the early 90s, so it's like the Halifax Harbor of our childhoods, it still pretty much looks like that in real life.
Yeah, it's uncanny. It literally looks like a tiny Halifax Harbor, to the point where we watched 2 episodes this week, but because they're both 15 minutes long, we had time to kind of see an older episode and watch a newer episode. And in the episode, Pugwash is Gone, we see the Pugwash gets distracted by the ferries in the harbor,
yes,
which are identical to the real-life ferries in Halifax Harbor that I've taken, hundreds of thousands of times. And I'm not sure about you, Will, because I'm a Dartmouthian, so I've definitely been taking the ferry back and forth quite a bit. But you used to go to college at Dartmouth, right? So you would have been on that ferry quite a bit as well.
Yeah, no, I've definitely had my time. The only difference is that in the last, I'd say, 10 years, they've done that, the Halifax branding has gotten a bit different. There's that blue with the little swish of yellow, which I think is on the ferries now. So they used to look, in terms of painting, they used to look a little different. But we still do have the twin ferries between the two kind of stations between Halifax and Dartmouth.
Forgive us, listeners. It's not often that Halifax gets mentioned in pop culture. In fact, there's a pretty good YouTube video that has every instance of the province that Halifax is in, Nova Scotia, being mentioned in movies. Like, for instance, there's a clip in, like, Ghostbusters where he's like, I ordered real lobster or salmon from Nova Scotia. Rick Moranis says that line. And so there's lots of... It's pretty sparing that we get to see a place we're from represented. You know, usually when movies are Canadian, it's elsewhere in the country. This is a place that people often forget about, pop culture-wise. So it's incredibly novel for us to not only see the town we currently live in represented, but also as, like, little miniatures. It's very cute.
Yeah, and it's a direct and it's a realistic representation, because I feel like a lot of times the stereotype of Nova Scotia is that, like, oh, weird. What was it like last year or something where people were taking exception to, like, actually I think it was this year, like the quiet fishing hamlet of Nova Scotia, and it's like, dude, that's not all we are. So,
I have to talk about this city as part of my job, and I can tell you, Will, 400,000 people live in Nova Scotia. It's the biggest city in the Atlantic provinces by a pretty wide margin. And it's a fairly young city too. I'm in work mode right now. 40,000 of them are university students, so it's a young city as well. But yeah, just looking at these clips now, you know, there's these iconic smokestacks that are present by the Halifax Harbor, these candy cane colored smokestacks. It's just uncanny. The bridges, the green bridges, and it makes sense that they would have picked Halifax as the location for this show, not only because, you know, they could walk out the door and see it and just work off that very real example. But two, harbors, you know, we're desensitized to living in a harbor town, but harbors, and especially harbors kind of as big and as busy as Halifax is, aren't as common as I used to believe when I was a kid. I used to think every place just had a harbor like this.
Yes.
So the kind of variety of boats you see in Theodore the Tugboat, they both start with T.
They both start with T.
It's almost, it's weird that they have almost nothing to, I'm surprised they didn't get litigious, because it is almost a palette swap of, okay, we're going to do the Theodore the Tugboat thing, but with we're going to do the Thomas the Tank Engine thing, but with boats instead. But yeah, Halifax is one of the only places that the show could take place in, because it's the only place with, like, tugboats and these larger ships, these military vessels and cargo ships and cruise ships. That stuff is coming in and out of the harbor every single day still. So it's kind of a really just not happy accident, but kind of a perfect location for the show to take place.
And some of the models of Theodore Tugboat, now I did look this up, some of them have been sold online, but the ones that have not been sold are on display at a downtown museum, the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic. I was mentioning on the Discord that I wish that, you know, I wish for many reasons we weren't in quarantine, but if I had had the opportunity, I would have gone downtown to take a snap of Theodore 2 and gone into the museum to take a picture of the models there.
Yeah, that's how much we love boats, folks, here in Halifax. We have a whole museum about them. But yeah, that's the other thing, is that the Theodore 2, the life-sized, not a model, but an actual real-deal tugboat that looks like the Theodore the Tugboat in the TV show, is a pretty, like, noticeable, for lack of a better term, landmark. Even though he's not landlocked, he can kind of go out wherever he wants in the harbor. But it's a big tourist attraction. Like, the other day, a couple of weeks ago, I was up on Citadel Hill, which is another Halifax landmark. It's kind of one of the highest points in Halifax. It overlooks the city. And looking down, I could see Theodore staring back at me from the harbor.
If you want, you can check it out in the general channel of the Discord. Crimson Cloudburst put up a picture when they visited in 2014. And that's one of the things, if you do come to visit Halifax, most likely your tour is going to involve at least looking at Theodore 2. I've never been on him.
No,
so to speak.
I was on him when I was a little kid. I think there's photos somewhere in my parents' house of me being on Theodore 2 when I was much younger.
Yes, but I've never been on because I think it's a wee bit expensive. So especially if you live here, it's like, well, I can see the harbor from the ferry just fine, and that's like $250. But yeah, so Theodore, after all of this kind of filming and designing, 5 seasons it had, 130 episodes, and they would air like every 2 years between 1993 and 2001 on CBC, of course, on PBS, and on Discovery Kids. And it aired in over 80 different countries. In fact, the the YouTube video that I sent you of the first episode we're talking about is like, I want to say like Swedish or something. Like, that kind of took me by surprise. So yeah, Theodore 2, that kind of fits into the whole thing of like, of course, this show is rather marketable for something from Halifax. It's, they sold toys and models and, bath toys and all that. There's Theodore Tugboat merchandise. So I had a shirt and a hat. And I actually just remembered, so when I went to Disney World, when I think I was like 10 or 11 years old, I had a Theodore Tugboat shirt that I wore, and we went to the part in Epcot where you visit all the different countries. And the lady playing Alice in Wonderland was there, and she recognized my Theodore Tugboat shirt. So she immediately pointed that out, and I thought that was really cool.
I'm so jealous. If I was at the thrift store, which I'm one to be, and I saw some of that Theodore Tugboat drip, that's an Instacop.
Totally. And I think you could probably still get your hands on the merchandise if you wanted to today. It might be a little bit more scarce, but I think it's still possible to get something like that. And Lucas, yeah, so we've been talking about Theodore 2. It was constructed by the producers such as Fred Allen in the late 1990s, and it was a big thing, of course, because it's the giant Theodore Tugboat, and like his eyes move and everything. It's a really, really great, like, full-scale version of it. And it did an initial tour from Tampa, Florida, through the Great Lakes to Chicago and all the way back to Halifax. So if you were our age and living in those kinds of areas, you may even remember when Theodore sailed past. And he still resides there in Halifax Harbor. But this year, the company that owns him, Ambassadors, announced it is going to sell the boat for $496,000. So Theodore 2 is up for sale right now, and there's currently 4 bidders who are having at it to own a piece of Halifax history.
That's right. If any of our listeners are, a multi-millionaire, you could own Theodore the Tugboat if you so wanted.
Or we could put up a tier on Patreon. If you pay us $496,000 a month, we will buy Theodore.
How many Patreon subscribers do we have right now? Like 40?
50, a little bit over 50.
So what? Everybody would have to pitch like 10 grand?
Yeah. I think that's pretty safe.
Oh, you guys all got 10 grand laying around, don't you?
Of course.
Global pandemic? What's that?
You've been hoarding your money.
Exactly.
You've lived safely and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, Theodore Tugboat, it's not something, I feel like, of course, since it's been off the air, it's not really known as much. But for people like us who kind of grew up at the time where it was on TV, it is definitely a small part of our little heritage over here in Halifax and in Nova Scotia. So, like Lucas said, we decided to take a look at 2 different episodes today, not related to one another. I wanted to do one from the first season in 1993 and the final season in 2001. So the one from 1993 that we watched, the episode is True Blue Friends. And of course, as always, the theme song to Theodore Tugboat.
And Will, if you're at home playing For the Kids Bingo, the theme song slaps. It is a certified bop. It is a banger.
Now, here's the question. So, the theme song is composed by a fellow named Graham Shaw, who was the lead of a band called the Sincere Serenaders. He won a Juno Award in 1981, and then went on to make several jingles, including for a lot of CBC news programs and for Esso gas stations. And he also composed the incidental music throughout the show. Do you prefer the theme song with lyrics or without?
Oh, with lyrics.
Really?
I like hearing about, because they do like one of those things where it's like a roll call, where it's like Theodore and Emily and the Harbormaster too. We get to hear about all the different boats, because it's not just Theodore who lives in Halifax Harbor. So I always got a kick out of that part.
So I agree. I like the one with lyrics, but I also was kind of vibing in this first video. Like, it starts off with the lyric less, just the music, and I was kind of like, yeah, this is all right. Like, this is pretty good. It reminds me of, did you ever see that Vine where it's like, is somebody listening to Lil Yachty and they're playing the menu music from Mario 64?
No, that's very funny.
I should send that to you. So yeah, great theme song, as always, or so it seems. Yeah, so immediately it was really cool to get on, quote unquote, the ground level with this model of Halifax Harbor. As we said before, I think it looks amazing.
Oh my gosh,
and even
details like, I've already mentioned the bridge, and I've already mentioned the smokestacks, but even I just noticed now the grain elevator is like in the background. Yeah. It's truly, I assume it's not 1-to-1 or what have you, but it is immediately, to anyone who lives there, recognizable as Halifax, to the point where like the skyline, like the big not really skyscrapers, but the taller buildings across the harbor are recreated. It's not just generic tall buildings. They literally went, and those big tall glass buildings right near where the ferries dock, they made replicas of those buildings specifically. The attention to detail, it's so funny because they didn't really have to do this. This show is in 80 different countries. Those people don't care if it looks just like Halifax, but I so appreciate that they did, because what a great kind of memory, and what a great kind of time capsule for our town.
There's even, I mean, there are points when I'm watching the show and I'm like, I can point to a building. It's the building with the blue windows and kind of the white trim around it.
That's the one I was just talking about.
Like,
yeah, right by the where the ferry docks.
Yeah, I worked there, and I can just be like, which is very rare that I get to say like, hey, I worked there, or I used to, at least earlier this year. I was also immediately hit, I gotta say, and of course, I think it improved as time went on. The show looks a bit more low budget immediately than my child brain remembers, and maybe that's a bit of my bias towards Thomas the Tank Engine, which was a much bigger part of my childhood. And of course, you look at Thomas now and you can kind of see, sometimes you can see the seams of it a little bit, but I think it still looks pretty good. Theodore took a little bit of adjusting of like, not that it looks bad, I don't want to say that, but it's like, you know, as an adult, of course, you can tell that the sky in the background is like probably just like a, you know, it's a bit painted on, and everything, you can see like the modelness of it all, and the seams are a little bit more visible, as I say. And I don't want that to take away from it, but immediately it was like I hadn't hadn't sat down to watch Theodore Tugboat in dozens of years. And then I do, and I'm like, whoa, okay, well, things are different.
It's one of those things where I think, you know, when as a kid, Theodore the Tugboat looks literally photorealistic. Like in my memories, Theodore the Tugboat isn't just like a model of Halifax; it is Halifax. But I, in a way, almost enjoyed it more looking back at it now, because I don't know about you, I don't watch a lot of current PBS programming. That's not Arthur. So I don't know how many shows are using this kind of, it's not even stop motion, it's just moving models as they're like puppets, basically, mechanized puppets. But there's still something so unique about the way this show looks, with models floating on water. There's truly, like, I guess besides this Tugs show, there's truly like nothing else I can think of that looks quite like this. And just like how I feel with movies that don't use CGI, so for instance, like Gremlins 2 or something, one of my favorites, it ages so well because there's something physically in front of the camera, and I think the same could be said for Theodore the Tugboat. Imagine if Theodore the Tugboat was animated, like another show that was at the time in the 90s, Reboot, right? Reboot. Yes. Kind of looks horrible. Looks
janky.
It looks janky. I mean, in its defense, it was the first ever CGI animated program, TV program ever. So of course it looks janky. But Theodore, kind of, in a way, as much as it looks like you can see the seams, holds up because it's all just physical models.
Well, I think part of it was that when I was a kid, like, the only thing I could think of was that, like, this must be real life. Because how could somebody make this, you know? Like, it's just really like, of course, now that I'm older, I understand, you know, you can understand the process. I've seen behind-the-scenes photos of how it was made. But when I was a kid, it's just like, well, how are they filming boats with eyes that are moving. Like, this has to be real, right? Like, I'm pretty sure before Theodore 2 came around, I would wonder, like, where the tugboats were in Halifax Harbor. Yeah, there is a real physical charm to it, and that was immediately... So, the plot of this episode is about the tugboat named George, who has the backwards blue baseball cap, and he is acting suspicious about something. He kind of seems like he's acting very elusive to Theodore. And I was thinking, like, the models themselves, I think they're controlled really, really well. So basically all they do, it's like Tom's the Tank Engine. Their eyes can move, and they can physically move, but they have, painted on expressions that change from shot to shot as they need to. But the models, the way that they move and the way that they have to act through their eyes is very expressive, and like they're very good at getting them to communicate physically what's going on, because it's also being narrated by the Harbormaster, who we'll get into in the next episode a little bit more. What also helps is the music. I thought that I was thinking that if you took the music away from Theodore Tugboat, like just the background music that happens as the action happens, this wouldn't be half as good. Like, you would lose something if you didn't have the music kind of driving the actions forward. I don't know if you kind of noticed that too.
Mm-hmm. No, I noticed, yeah.
And the music itself also, like, it's like chill beats to sail to. It's actually really cool. There's some kind of nautical themes to it, but also there's, that 90s synthesizer going on. It's pretty cool.
Is it? Yeah, it's a synthesizer, but it also kind of sounds like what is that instrument that's like a xylophone but isn't a xylophone? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so, but it's not coming to me.
Let's see how much mileage I get out of a xylophone adjacent instrument as a Google search.
I feel like you could have a pretty decent vaporwave album if you took all of the musical cues from Theodore and kind of rejiggered them a little bit.
A marimba. It sounds like a marimba.
Okay.
Or a vibraphone or a glockenspiel. Anyway, yeah. Remember C-punk? It kind of sounds like C-punk music.
Yeah, that did have a little bit of its time. Hey, who knows? Maybe somebody already did do that. So, like I mentioned, it's much like Thomas. There is a narrator who is narrating all the action, and is also doing the voices of all of the characters himself. I don't exactly remember what this line in context was. I just thought it was funny. At one point, the narrator says, "With a heave and a hoe, and even a hoe and a half." I wanted to make sure to get that in there right around this time. So the idea behind the story is that George is due for his annual checkup, since he's a boat, but he doesn't like the idea of being scraped, like having his his hull scraped, I should say. So he's planning to hide behind a garbage barge in order to not be checked out. And then Theodore finds out about it, and the whole thing. This is very much based around learning a lesson, because Theodore is asked to keep his secret no matter what, but then it comes to be that George could be in trouble in terms of, literally his life is on the line, and Theodore has to figure out, do I tell his secret, or does he die?
Does George die? George is pretty annoying, eh? He's a hard guy to be around. Theodore very amicable.
These are George negative episodes.
Oh, so something else about this. So all the characters, this is another deep-seated connection. All the characters in Theodore the Tugboat, with the exception of Theodore himself, I think, are named after places in Nova Scotia. So
there's a lot more of this in the second episode, but yeah, there's a lot of Nova Scotia names.
So George is named after, of course, George's Island, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, you know what? I didn't even think about that, but I bet you're right. And speaking of names, so of the main tugboats, who they say in the theme song, there's Theodore, there's Emily, George, Hank, who we don't see.
Okay, I guess Emily and Hank aren't named after anywhere.
Yeah. There's the Harbormaster, and then I looked this up, and especially because he's a big part of the second episode, there's Foduck. And I don't know why his name is Foduck, and I tried to look it up, and I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds like a character from, The Dark Crystal or something.
Well, it sounds like a swear. It sounds like they want to say
Foduck.
But
do you know how to spell Foduck? It's like an orc name.
I imagine it's Foduck. That's at least I think that's how the hey. Also, big shout out to the Theodore Tugboat wiki who helped with a lot of this research.
Oh,
I tried to do my due diligence.
When you
about
look
this.
up Foduck on Google, Foduck name, the first thing that comes up is the Theodore the Tugboat character.
Right. So, like, I don't know. That would be my number one question to the creator of this show, Andrew Cochran, or anybody else. So, what's the deal with Foduck? Where did his name come from?
In the Finnish version, he's called Freddy.
Freddy.
Or sorry, in the Norwegian version, he's called Freddy. In the Swedish version, he's called Frederick.
Which is like why like, and then you're just like, well, why did they name him that anyway? Like, why Foduck? It obviously doesn't translate. Anyway, if anybody knows, please leave a comment on Patreon or in the Discord. Like even like when I got to know how old swear words were, I was like, did they just do that to like say fuck on a kids show? Like. Or what are we talking about here? We literally get to a point where the tugboats have to, like, I think they have to, like, bash the garbage barge against the dock or something to, like, get the rust off of it or something. And if they do that, then George, who is hiding, will be killed. So Theodore has to kind of, is in between, like, should I keep the secret or should I tell? And he does ask, I believe he asks Emily at one point, and she's just like, you know, it's a typical, like, well, if it's going to hurt somebody, then you should maybe tell. And then eventually he does. And then at the end of the episode, it turns out that George actually likes being inspected. He likes having his hull scraped. It's not all that bad. But you're right, Lucas. These are two very George negative episodes that we picked. Not intentionally or anything.
I feel like I even remember as a kid not liking George.
Well, he's a very, like, his character is very stern, and he's kind of like the... What's the anime trope of, like, the the Sasuke?
He's Tsundere? Oh, no, he's like Sasuke. He's like Theodore's rival.
Yeah. So he's very much kind of that. But as we get into the second episode here, Pugwash is gone. So right away, Pugwash.
Yes, so Pugwash is a place in Nova Scotia. Other thing I noticed immediately in the newer episode, less overcast. They made Halifax a little bit sunnier, looks a little bit more appealing.
Yeah, you're right. It is kind of cloudy in this first episode that we watched, and maybe that changes from episode to episode. We're not sure. There are a lot of these things.
Also, live action Harbormaster.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. This is something that wasn't represented in the first episode that we watched, but in Pugwash is Gone, this is something that you probably would have seen if you were watching as a kid. So they would do the beginning and ending bumpers of the show with a character named the Harbormaster, who is also the narrator of the show. He is played by a man named Denny Doherty, who was a native Haligonian. Get this, founding member of the Mamas and the Papas.
Legendary group. Legendary. Listen, Mamas and the Papas, they got hits.
First of all, ask your parents about the Mamas and the Papas.
California Dreamin'. Dude.
Yeah.
That's an all-time classic. People are still making TikToks of California Dreamin'. And that song's super old.
So yeah, Denny Doherty was a musician and an actor. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2007. So R.I.P. to him. Now, here's a little anecdote from me. I got a postcard from the Harbormaster one time. Now, I wish I could remember. First of all, I wish I had it nearby. So I'm sure I've kept it, but I don't know where it is. But there was a thing where you could, like, send I don't know what it was. Pretty sure it was, like, facilitated by my mom or something. But, like, we sent a letter you could send a letter to basically the studio where it was made. And then we got a Theodore Tugboat postcard back that was, like, signed from the Harbormaster. And I remember being really, really excited because I thought that was super cool. Again, it's like, when you're a kid, it's like, wow, the television character wrote back to me. And it kind of perpetrated the myth that Theodore Tugboat is real.
Another interesting thing about the Harbormaster is, unlike, for instance, in, like, Thomas the Tank Engine, where, what is it, the Sir Topham Hatt, or is that the guy? He's voiced
Sir Topham Hatt, the Fat Controller.
That's right. So he's not live action. He's a model, right?
That's right.
In Theodore the Tugboat, he's live action, but then also the Harbormaster, the building, the office that the Harbormaster works out of, has eyes and can talk. So it's like when the Harbormaster talks to the boats, it's the building talking, but there's also like a little man in there.
Yeah.
It's like a mecha or something. It's like a Gundam that he's piloting.
Yeah, there's and unlike in Thomas the Tank Engine, they don't talk about like there's never any mention to like Theodore having a driver, like a captain.
Yeah, it's true.
The boats move on their own, but they have a human overseeing them. Is the idea. I really liked the I mean, he's not on screen for long, but I really liked the introduction and the conclusion from the Harbormaster. I think he's a very warm and welcoming presence. He's talking here about like the seashells he's collected, and he's polishing his bell because at the end of the episode he would normally ring the bell. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Nova Scotia name, so I'm glad you brought it up. So first of all, in this episode, there's a mini sub who they're friends with, whose name is Pugwash, who we talked about before. There is, I mean, at some point, the Nova Scotia names started coming, and they don't stop coming. So there was Stewiacke, who is a carrier ship. There's Shelburne, the sea barge, and then there was another boat named Truro.
And I apologize again, dear listeners. You guys can't understand how much serotonin this gives me and Will just to hear like these words out loud. Look at a map of Nova Scotia. If you haven't before, look up Nova Scotia on Google Maps. Because when I listen to music, when I listen to podcasts, sometimes, Will, I'm sick of hearing about L.A. and New York. It's nice to hear about some places that I actually go to. So to hear, Pugwash and Stewiacke and Truro, all roads in Nova Scotia lead to Truro. Well, you got to drive through Truro to get anywhere else. It's the novelty never wears off.
And so if you look on the Wikipedia page, you can see the kind of links to the real names and locations that some of these ancillary characters are based on. And this is direct as representation gets, because for example, these aren't seen in the episode. I'm just going by the list here. There's a buoy in a place called Willie's Island named Bedford, which is where I live. There is a visiting cable ship named Dartmouth, which is where Lucas is from.
Oh my goodness, Dartmouth!
There's Cobequid Cove. There's a character named Cumberland. There's a lighthouse named Lunenburg. It goes on, and this is like, oh my god. This is like the most regional shout-outs that you can imagine. It's like street names in New York. Like you said,
the closest thing is that in when the Raptors play and they have the Raptors commentators, whenever Kyle Lowry hits a three from way outside, they'll list a Canadian city. So he'll be like, all the way from Charlottetown, or sometimes he'll go all the way from Yarmouth. Like they'll just list Canadian towns. And so whenever they say one on the East Coast, I do the Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood thing where I
point at the screen.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever it's all the way from Guysborough.
Yeah, this was great. I will also say they did name the two fairies, which I don't think caught on in real life. They're named Philip and Fillmore, the fairy twins.
Now, the fairies got replaced. There was a new fairy, because I believe in real life the fairies are named after famous historical figures from Nova Scotia. The Vince Coleman and the Viola Desmond, I believe.
Great names. So, this episode is all about Pugwash and how Pugwash is going on a deep sea mission that is being overseen by Theodore, George, and Fodak.
Now I'm trapped in looking at this Wikipedia page. I'm like, oh my god,
great,
the Barrington barge, Digby the cable ship, the Guysborough garbage barge.
I think. I was thinking of Shelburne, the sea barge, in this episode. They have to keep Pugwash attached to a cable, and George and Fodak are supposed to look after. I believe Pugwash is a her. Goes by she/her pronouns. But then they kind of lose track of her because George and Fodak. George is kind of the stern, proud character, and Fodak is kind of the lawful good, by the book kind of guy. He's what type? He's a fireboat.
Okay, one last crazy revelation about the names. Sure. One of the cargo ships is named Emma Sophia.
Yes,
that is Jeff Rosen's daughter's name. Not her full name. Like, I don't want to
right. First name, middle name.
Yeah, but that's a little Easter egg. He named that boat after his daughter.
That's awesome. That's so great. So we mentioned how there's so many of these analogs between real Halifax Harbor and the one in the show. I don't think we ever had anything that was like the Dispatcher. Do you know who I'm talking about?
In what way? Like, what do you mean?
There's not, like, we don't have a thing with eyes that like rotates around and that has like a mustache.
No, we do not have a moving mustache building, but I feel like we do have a dispatch office. It just doesn't look like this crazy building. Like, I think someone is dispatching on the harbor, directing traffic to ensure no Halifax Explosion 2 happens. That was because two boats hit each other in the harbor. We got to stop that from happening.
Of course. So the meat of this episode is that Fodak and George don't want to have to work together because they believe they're the best, and they keep kind of showing off. Like, George is kind of like going backwards, and Fodak is like showing off his I forget if it's like his flags or his firelight or something. Lucas, they get into a real dock measuring contest.
Oh my goodness. That's
And one thing that this episode really illustrated to me was that, again, in comparison to Thomas and Friends, is that Thomas and Friends, I don't know if you've watched it at all or recently, like I have, because it's me. Like, I would describe it as, especially in comparison to Theodore, as very action-packed. Like, there's a lot going on. A lot of times there's like peril.
I have seen clips out of context of Thomas and Friends in which trains are murdering other trains.
Yeah,
there's like one where they're like Edgar Allan Poe story style, like blocking a train in, like using bricks to like lock up a train forever.
Poor old Henry.
Oh gosh.
But in comparison, Theodore has a very slow and calm pace to it, and I think it's very much like the water that they're on. Like, nothing happens quickly, but things do happen. It's just they happen at a much kind of measured pace, and I actually found that pretty refreshing. So essentially, the story goes that it's very moralistic, this show. They always find a way to tie it in. They end up losing the line that Pugwash was on, and then George and Fodak realize that, we were so busy trying to compete with each other that we didn't even actually do our jobs. So they work together, and they recover Pugwash, and it's all good. And they view a very nice Halifax Harbor sunset. So yeah, it's very easy. There's a lot. It's a good thing that we have so much to talk about in kind of the content, everything surrounding the episode, because the stories themselves are pretty simple.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're A to B to C, but they're not even A to B to C. They're more like A to B.
A to B, yeah, which is fine. I mean, it does seem to be, it is something that, younger kids can latch onto, but there is so much to go back for us specifically. Now, I think this is going to be difficult to kind of wrap up in terms of like how we objectively feel about it as a show. I don't even know if it's possible for us to be objective about Theodore Tugboat.
I just don't think it's in the cards, Will. I'm still looking at this name Wikipedia page. Natalie Explorer, that's Jeff Rosen's other daughter. Okay, so the amount of sort of extra context. There's no way for me to put on the goggles of what would this show be like for someone who doesn't know what Inverness is.
This is also the first episode for the kids where we have like literal inside information.
I know, not since you interviewed the storyboard artist for Arthur, have we been able to kind of go behind the curtain to this level, as well as kind of bring our own experiences of just kind of how much of a cultural icon Theodore the Tugboat is for people who live around here, right? Because it's kind of one of the biggest shows, I would say, if not the biggest show that takes place in Halifax. Not since Halifax was portrayed as the crappy place that Anne of Anne of Green Gables fame lives before she goes to Green Gables has Halifax gotten such kind of a center stage or such spotlight. So, yeah, I mean, if you're going to ask, for instance, we always talk about, okay, what was this show like to watch as an adult? I would say I had a blast going back and watching episodes of Theodore the Tugboat, and also, even almost more so, reading about Theodore the Tugboat and reminiscing about Theodore the Tugboat. Now, I think you asked me last time when we were talking about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yes.
You asked, would it still work for kids of this era? And that's something that I wasn't as sure about. It is really slow-paced. I bet for, extremely young kids, because there's something, I think young kids still like Thomas the Tank Engine. And I think
totally, it's still going.
Yeah, and yeah. I attribute that to especially young boys, but young girls as well, are really into when you personify mechanized things, right? They love cars, trucks, working vehicles, trains.
Boats.
When I was a little kid, when I was in single digits, my mom used to drive me to the construction yards, and I would be like, "That's a front end loader," because I like watching Mighty Machines and stuff. So I think that if you have a kid that's 5, 6, 7, and you plop them in front of Theodore the Tugboat. I don't know if they've been iPadded to death that their attention span couldn't even handle it anymore, but I think that it still has that appeal of seeing these kind of mechanized beings come to life and zip around the harbor. Maybe that's just wishful thinking because I want the spirit of Theodore to live on, but that's what I honestly believe.
I think you're right. I think there would be something that would be, especially to the types of kids, like you said, like myself. I loved the idea of trains when I was a kid. And then when Theodore Tugboat came on, I was like, oh, boats are cool too. It's because you put faces on them. I think there is something that is, as kids, I don't think they'd be like, ooh, this one isn't in CGI. I don't think I'll waste my time. I think some kids will like it and some kids won't. In fact, I find it a little strange that we've never heard any talk about, making a CGI show out of Theodore Tugboat, which seems like the easiest idea in the world. If you want to update this, they're doing Thomas the Tank Engine is CGI now, and he's still popular. Why not just do that with Theodore? Because something I did want to mention before, actually, was that every time that they would illustrate Theodore on something, draw him, it looked wrong to me. So, talking about how they kind of look as physical, tangible objects. But I still think that could be something that, hey, free idea, PBS, CBC, anybody. The rights are now with DreamWorks Classics.
Will, we got to get you in a boardroom with Jeff Rosen. I think he still makes TV shows.
Oh, dude, I would be happy to. I would be happy to write a...
No, I don't quite know him like that. But, we do live in the same city, so you never know.
Hey man, I'll write a season of Theodore Tugboat for you. I'll bang one out in a month. I can do that. Probably, maybe. Anyway, I'd love to try. But I think that this is something that if you had a kid who was super into the things we're talking about, putting them in front of Theodore Tugboat, they'd probably love it. And unfortunately, I don't think it's streaming anywhere, so you can find all the episodes we found these on YouTube, so I think they're easy enough to kind of get your hands on. But there is something, this is very much a formative show from my childhood, so this was very fun to go back to, and it does hold up in a sense. You kind of watch it, and it's kind of great to just leave on and just kind of half pay attention to, because, the plots are very simple, the music is pleasant, it's really cool to look at, it's just kind of like, yeah, this is nice. You don't mind being on in the background, and... It's I think there is still something to go back to about it. So I'm glad that we both kind of had a good time in going back to something that is a part of Halifax history, which we won't be able to say for too many other TV shows. So this is normally the part of the show where one of us decides what the topic is, but that's going to be changing for this episode coming up that is going to change for the next episode of For the Kids, because we are having our first ever patrons poll about what show we're going to be talking about next. Because, Lucas, we watched a lot of TV, we watch a lot of TV, but we haven't seen everything. So sometimes we need a little bit of guidance.
No, well, I would say I haven't seen more than I've seen.
That is the curse we have to live with. But you all, the patrons, have seen... combined more than we have, and we got some suggestions over on the Discord about shows that we should cover, and we put it all into a poll. So there are 4 choices. The poll is going to go up probably, most likely, sometime this weekend, the weekend of September the 21st. And we're going to leave it up for about 7 days' time or so. We'll make sure to communicate it completely with y'all on Discord so you don't miss anything. By the way, if you're not on the Discord, get on there. Or if you need the link, please let me know. But I can tell you the 4 choices. So on the poll, you'll have to vote for one of these. And we don't know, like, I've never watched a single episode of any of them. So this is all going to be new to us. But the shows on the poll include Word Girl, Martha Speaks, Maya and Miguel, and finally, Booba.
I don't want to color the votes, so I won't say which, but I have seen 3 of those 4 shows, Will.
Right. I'm sorry. I shouldn't speak for you because we were kind of born at different times. So there could be stuff on there that you've seen before, but I haven't seen. So I kind of had to take the directive.
Now,
here.
Will, you've heard of Booba, correct?
I have.
The Booba Zone? Are you familiar with the Booba Zone?
No.
We'll save it. Okay. We'll see how the poll shakes up, and that's a conversation for another time.
Like I say, I know what Booba is. I know what Maya and Miguel is. I know what Martha Speaks is. I have no idea what Word Girl is, and that's where I'm at. So we will put up that poll very, very soon, and you will be able to vote on what the next episode of For the Kids is. And of course, if you have any lasting memories about Theodore, Tugboat, or any of the shows that we've covered on For the Kids, let us know in the Patreon comments or start a conversation over on the ECL Discord. And thank you very much for listening. And Lucas, let's hope we don't get blown away, and hopefully Theodore will remain safely as well as we get ready for Hurricane Teddy to make his way to our shores.
Yes, hashtag pray for Theodore. Let's hope he makes it through Hurricane Teddy all right. I mean, actually, Hurricane Teddy will be long in the past, so listeners, you already know Theodore's fate. But we'll soon find out. Until next time.
Oh, boy. Until next time, that was...